Good afternoon. My name is Scott Hicks. I'm Director of the Teaching and Learning Center at UNC Pembroke. And with Dr. Miko Nino of the Office of Online Learning, I'm happy to welcome you to today's webinar with Dr. Elise Dixon of the UNCP Writing Center. Dr. Dixon is a new faculty member, a member of the Department of English, Theater, and Foreign Languages, and her presentation today is titled The UNCP Writing Center and How We Can Help Your Students. Dr. Dixon, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I just want to let you all know I'm working from home today because I had to get a gas range delivered. So that's why I'm here, and you might hear my dog barking because he can't help himself. So bear with me, please. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. First, hello. It's nice to see you all, and it's so nice to be at UNCP. I so far just love it here. So just a little bit about me. My name is Elise Dixon, as you just heard, and I just finished my PhD in writing and rhetoric from Michigan State University, and my research focus is on queer and cultural rhetorics and their intersection with writing center studies. I'm new here, so please feel free to reach out in professional colleagueship or out of friendship. I'm looking for friends. So, but today, really, the presentation is not about me looking for friends, but rather to kind of describe what the Writing Center is for, to dispel a few myths, and there goes my dog, and to discuss a little bit about how the Writing Center can help you and your students learn a little bit more about how to help themselves as writers. So first, the Writing Center, as it exists now across the country in universities, comes out of some scholarship that was made most famous in the early 80s. Writing centers were born out of a need for through open enrollment universities to provide writing help that was not an extension but an alternative to traditional classroom teaching. And this was discussed by Kenneth Bruffy in 1984, who noted that a great deal of students struggled to go into writing labs as they existed back then, because they were similar to a classroom model where an authoritative figure provided the instruction, and so the Writing Center model, which is a more peer-to-peer collaborative environment, was developed. 3 years later, Stephen North wrote, Writing Centers really, it's our true axiom statement. We want to focus on better writers, not better writing. So a Writing Center's goal is to not be a fix-it shop where you tell your student to bring in a paper and our tutors just fix the errors. It's really more about developing a collaborative relationship that is conversational, where the tutor's main goal is to help the students develop more confidence in their writing and develop more skills for them to work on their papers in the future. So really, truly, our goal is to help you enough that you feel the confidence to be able to work on your paper and do some really big global revisions. A lot of times we tend to have some beliefs among students and faculty that writing centers are remedial spaces. They're only for people who are bad at writing, but writing centers are for everyone, for people who don't feel that they are very skilled at writing, and for people who have extreme command of their written language. I just now scheduled an appointment for myself for a book chapter proposal that I'm working on. So the Writing Center can benefit anybody, including faculty members. Our tutors have been trained over the course of a semester to really think through their own tutoring pedagogy and to be able to help anyone, including somebody who has an expertise in an area that they might not share. So who are our Writing Center tutors here at UNCP? Right now, we have one graduate student who is a graduate student in English and 6 underclass people. And I tutor sometimes on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 to 1. Right now, we have so many different majors and writing interests. We do have some English majors, but we also have an information technology student, a biology student, and the goal for us always is to make sure that we have tutors who have lots of different skills and interests so that they can be prepared to help lots of different students and students can find somebody that they mesh with very well. We've got some tutors who have regulars who have been seeing them for years. And I love to see that because there's a level of trust there and a level of collaboration that is so clear when you see a regular working with their tutors, with their tutor. Some of these tutors too have been they've been working through 3 different writing center directors, and I bring that up only to just say that they really understand the needs of UNCP students because they are UNCP students, but also because they have been through quite a bit of change and have been sort of the guiding force for the center as we move forward. I rely on them, and they are just incredible, delightful humans, and you can find their bios on our website. I very much trust them, and I know that you can trust your students with them as well. They're just incredible people, and I'm so thrilled to have them on my team. So, what can we expect in a session? This presentation is partially to help you sort of understand what you can tell your students if you recommend the Writing Center to them. And so I think a lot of times our students come in thinking that they're going to plop their paper on the desk, or in this case, online, and say, you know, just help me. And tutors have been trained to ask a question like, you know, what is it that you want to work on today? And this is to try to show that the student always has the power over their work first. So the student should guide the session, and the student should feel like they have control over the session. So our tutors are generally instructed to not be extremely hands-on or directive. Their goal is to ask lots of questions to develop and facilitate a collaborative environment among themselves and their student, and provide opportunities to work together and apart. And what I mean by that is, instead of saying, hey, why don't you write this sentence like this? We might say, I see that you're missing a topic sentence. Why don't you take 5 minutes to write a topic sentence or a couple of them so that we have some options, and then we can talk about that topic sentence together. So we try to create space where we put the power in the hands of the student to show them that they have the power to write themselves and to write well. And then we try to provide some guidance along the way. I also train the tutors to focus on higher order concerns over lower order concerns, meaning I want students to focus first on the content of the paper, on the argument, on the large parts of the paper that are most important to you as faculty or as instructors as well. We want to make sure that the student has understood the writing prompt, whatever that may be, is following the conventions of that writing prompt, has a clear argument if that's what the paper is supposed to be doing. And so we focus much more on content rather than grammar or citation. Tutors have been encouraged to think about, if I see that this paper is well constructed, is meeting all of the requirements that the instructor has given them, then we can start talking about grammar and citation style. But that often comes last, or it comes in the second session. A lot of times we'll also encourage our tutors to suggest to the student to come back again if they want to really refine their work because they spent so much time working on an outline or revising our introduction, or whatever it is that's going to make this paper much more clear to the instructor and to whatever audience the writer is working towards. So another question that we see quite a bit is, can I only bring in a completed draft? Am I supposed to bring in my final draft or a rough draft? And the answer, of course, is nope, nope, nope. You can bring in any piece of writing or no writing at all. Writing center tutors are trained to work through a brainstorming session to help you write an outline, just to even clarify your assignment. I do quite a bit of that on my own with students. You can bring in a rough draft, of course, and you can bring in a final draft that you think is perfect if you just want someone to look over it and tell you that it makes sense. Wherever you are in the writing process, we are prepared to meet you there and help you with your work, however you need help with that work. Another question we get a lot is, can I only bring in written alphabetic text? And we say, nope, nope, nope. If you want, if you're working on a website that you've been creating, if you have developed a podcast, if you have to make a PowerPoint presentation for class, multimodal projects, videos, if you have written a poem, if you've written a short story, if you wrote a letter, it doesn't have to be schoolwork either. Whatever it is, we are prepared to work with you. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of our tutors are excellent graphic designers, but what it does mean is that our tutors are capable of asking the important questions. What's your purpose? Who's your audience? How can we reach that audience more effectively? Let's work on that together. So we may not be able to give you the technical instruction for how to edit a video, but we could say, what would be nice is a really cool switch to the next scene. And that kind of stuff is what we're very good at here. So, of course, we're in a pandemic. So what does that mean? Another thing that I've been seeing a lot is some of our students don't know that we are entirely online for right now. We plan to be online for this fall, and then we will reconvene and discuss what we want to do in the spring, depending on how the pandemic is going. So right now we're entirely online, but we do have two options. We have synchronous sessions, which mean that when you log into our website called WC Online, you can have a session, and that's what this picture is here over on the right, which you can see my silly face. You'll end up in this little window once you click on your appointment, and there's usually two video screens, one for your tutor and one for the client. And then there's a chat box on the right-hand side if your video or audio doesn't work, or if you don't want to use it and you just want to type to the person. And then you copy and paste your paper right into that white space in the middle that says, welcome to your online consultation here. It gives you directions, and then you can figure out as you go. So in those sessions, they range from about a half an hour to an hour. And during that time, you are chatting with your consultant. We try to make it very similar to what a face-to-face appointment might be. Both parties can type in the document, and I like to encourage clients or students to collaborate with me as I work through the document. We also have another option because we have a great many students who are commuting and who may not have time to make an appointment that is synchronous. And so we have an asynchronous drop-off session where the client can submit their paper and a consultant will review it within 48 hours. Students might be worried that this might indicate that our tutors do more correcting in this kind of session, but tutors, again, have been trained to focus on asking questions, providing very large, extensive notes in the paper to show what they didn't understand and what could be improved upon. So again, we try not to make it a fix-it shop in any way. So right now, our drop-off situation is submitted via email, and you can find it on our website, but it's just dropoff@uncp.edu. But we are working on revising that system to actually just have drop-offs available in our mywconline.com site. I just figured out that we can do it. And so we're right now, as tutors, trying to figure out what would be the best scenario for that, whether we have specific drop-off days, or if we have drop-off options every day. So right now we're in the middle of a change, but for right now, you can instruct students to send their papers to the drop-off email address, which is again on our website. A few frequently asked questions that I see from instructors and teachers. First, one of the things that I want to talk about is quite a few people ask, should I assign a writing center session to my students? It is wonderful when faculty and instructors want their students to go access the Writing Center. We love working with students. We want to work with students, and it's great. I, however, would suggest instead of assigning a Writing Center session to students, perhaps offering extra credit for a Writing Center session for students. One of the myths that we try to dispel about the Writing Center is that it's a remedial space. And I have found in the past that assigning the Writing Center can lead to a disgruntled student who doesn't really want the help or doesn't feel they need the help. It has worked better in the past, in my experience, to offer extra credit. And so then the students who really do want the help will go and get the help, and they'll get the extra credit. It has worked for me as an instructor as well. Almost all my students go to the Writing Center when I offer the extra credit, and it seems like everyone is just a little bit happier to be there. That being said, if you do assign your student to the Writing Center, we can provide proof that they have been there. We can send you or the student an email letting you know that they did attend, but I would recommend the extra credit option rather than the mandatory option. Another question that we sometimes receive is, my student went to the Writing Center and their paper is still not meeting my criteria. Why? And some of that it's a bit complicated. Sometimes a student will come in and not necessarily have access or have remembered to bring their rubric or their assignment sheet. And so the tutor may be working with not as much information as they could be. So we recommend that clients always bring in a rubric or an assignment sheet, and that can help us help them figure out how to meet criteria. However, because we try to focus on content first and then grammar and citation last, it may be that the paper might not be meeting those specific criteria because we ended up focusing more on the meaning part of the paper for that session. So if the student hasn't met the criteria, I would, of course, encourage you to talk with your student, work through some of the confusion about the assignment sheet, and then recommend them to come to the Writing Center again if they would like to. And we are always happy to work with students multiple times on the same project. That's sometimes the best thing. Do we fix grammar and spelling for students? Again, mostly because we focus on higher order concerns over lower order concerns, fixing grammar and spelling is one of our final priorities in our projects. That being said, often we will talk with clients about grammar and spelling if grammar and spelling is impacting the meaning of the paper. If we can't really fully understand the meaning of the paper or the argument because of grammar and spelling errors, we might stop and say, this is a little bit hard for me to understand. Can you explain? Before we go in and just completely, track changes, change all the errors or all the mistakes, we often will encourage a client to notice their patterns of grammatical errors. So if we've got a subject-verb agreement issue that sort of occurs throughout the paper, we might underline or highlight them all and say, hey, I see that this is an error that you tend to make. Let me show you what is, correct in standard English, and let me show you and let me explain what the rules are and why you would want to change it to this other way. But again, the goal is to promote learning in a session as opposed to just fixing up a paper. So really, we might not have very much time in half an hour to an hour to really show somebody how to correct all their grammar or spelling errors. And then finally, how do you avoid helping too much? In the past, a few institutions ago for me, we had a lot of concern in that center because we had quite a few students who were multilingual, and our instructors were, understandably worried that our generally native speaking English students would be overcorrecting. But all of our tutors are trained to be very cautious about overcorrecting, to focus on learning rather than fixing. And so that's a key part of all of our sessions if you feel like a client is, or like a tutor has been doing too much helping, feel free to email me and we can talk about it and brainstorm. I'm always looking for more training opportunities for tutors, and I'm always looking to collaborate with faculty on what their needs and what their students' needs might be from the Writing Center, if we can accommodate it. And those are generally my overall points about the Writing Center. I'm happy to answer any questions as we move forward. And yeah, Scott, should I unshare at this point so that we can all talk face to face?
I would just leave it up. I love this image of Tom Hanks.
Yep.
It's a wonderful visual. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
For our listeners, if you have any questions, please unmute and ask, or ask them in the chat. While you might be doing that, I'm just going to ask a couple questions that came up to me as I listened.
Sure.
I loved your strategy of working together and apart, as you talked about how the tutors and the clients work together. How do you imagine that faculty might use that strategy in their own teaching and learning in their own classrooms, of working with students together but also apart?
I think that's a great question. I think thinking about developing a collaborative classroom means thinking through how to subvert the traditional lecture model in a classroom. And I think it depends. It really depends on the discipline, of course, that you're in. But I do think that probably in non-pandemical times, it's a little bit easier to develop and facilitate multiple activities. But I tend to try to avoid, just in terms of physical space, I try to avoid being at the front of the classroom for more than 10 minutes a class. And I try to create more space where I am walking around and talking to people, listening in on group activities. But my big rule for myself, I suppose, is to try to find ways to get out of the front and move into the actual environment. In these times when we're having lots of Zoom interactions, one of the things that I like to do is pretty easy, low tech work is I will just create a Google Doc, share it with everyone, drop their names into the document, and post a couple of questions. And as they answer their questions, I will read aloud some of the answers that I think are working well, promote some interactions with other people who have similar or opposing opinions about whatever we're looking at that day, and trying to just really get students to be doing work in the middle of the classroom while I'm facilitating the learning in that way. That way we can avoid me droning on, doing some Ferris Buellering, and students getting bored or tired. We all have screen fatigue right now. So just even a Google Doc can be the nicest, easiest way to have a little vacation from the typical lecture model. Oh, Scott, you're muted.
I forgot to unmute. And you can still work together and apart, as you said. Mm-hmm. I love that approach. The other thing I wanted to ask about was the way that you're working with students online, and you're sort of talking them through their essays, whether it's synchronous or asynchronously. Mm-hmm. How might that work in a classroom where a professor is responding to students' writing? What kind of impact might that make for a faculty member and student working together?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I think in terms of working through papers with students, I also tend to write a lot of questions in the margins. When I get a document, I will highlight whole sections, and I try to really, it's very easy when I'm grading to say things like "good move" without explaining what that move is. So I try kind of a 3-step process when I'm working through papers. One, I describe my overall impression of whatever statement I'm reading, which could be, this really resonates with me because of this, which is the second thing. Always provide a reason why I have questions or find a particular statement to be a good one. And then 3, I provide a next course of action or like a suggestion for changes. So it might look like, I'm not really fully understanding what this statement is. I think maybe what you mean is this, but I can't be sure. Could you clarify this particular, statement in this way? and try to get as specific as possible. And that kind of feedback takes a long time. If you've got 80 papers to grade, that's very, very tough to do. So I also try to limit how much feedback I can give. For instance, again, another rule for myself, this is not like a rule that everybody should follow, but another rule that I give myself is no more than 3 comments per page so that I can make it through the papers. It also helps me to prioritize what I think is the most important part of communicating in the text that I'm reading. So that's one move. And then, of course, I think we're all learning the value of individual conferences with our students when we can have them. That's something that I really am planning to do with my first year writers right now, because I think sometimes that individual attention goes a long way, even if we find that we're repeating ourselves throughout the day. So yeah, those would be some of my suggestions that I use every day when I'm working with students.
And thanks to being online and being remote and having tools like Zoom or WebEx, we're able to meet students where they are, no
Right.
matter where they are. I appreciate that point. We have a question in the chat. I have 2 writing enriched sections in the spring semester. Can I mandate regular student visits to the Writing Center? And if so, what would be the proof of assistance?
So you can mandate regular Writing Center appointments, though, again, I would recommend offering up extra credit, an extra credit point or 5 points or something, as opposed to mandating. If you do mandate a Writing Center session, we in WC Online, even if you drop off your paper, we enter an appointment into our appointment website, and then there's a little space for our tutors to write a debrief after their session. And this is a place where we sort of acknowledge the work that we did, provide any suggestions for what they need to be doing in the future for that paper. And then tutors, they're not instructed to email all of these notes to the client. The client can access it whenever they want to. But if the student says, I'm doing this for class, can you email it to me and I'll forward it over to my teacher? We just click a little box that says email to client, and then it goes right over to the student. So yeah, if you do mandate it, we can make sure to get you the proof that you need. But again, I would recommend extra credit over the mandating.
And the suggestion here in the chat was to put some points in the grading rubric for making an appointment and following through with the Writing Center.
Oh yeah, I like that too. That's a nice move. Yeah.
We have another question. At what point do you, as a faculty member, gently recommend to students that they might need to make an appointment with the Writing Center? Even when grading midterm exams, I am currently seeing in the discussion section that they might need to visit the Writing Center.
Yeah, I think that there's great ways to do this in a way that makes the student feel like you're offering a resource rather than telling them that they need help and and they're at a loss for how to fix. I think when I try to suggest to a student that they go to the Writing Center, it will look something like, this paper is such a great start, and I am really excited to see it in its fully fledged form. And have you ever been to the Writing Center? I made an appointment with them just a couple weeks ago, or however you want to say it. Or if you've never made an appointment with the Writing Center, you could say something like, I always tried to show my writing to at least 2 or 3 people before I submit it for publication or for a class. And I would recommend that you get another pair of eyes on this paper. So, let me help you. And then helping them get to the website and showing them how to access it would be one way to do it. And of course, students love extra credit. So, hey, if you go, I'll give you 5 points extra credit. How does that sound? That tends to work the best for me. Trying to just be very friendly about it. Trying not to say you need help, but maybe, what could be good is an extra pair of eyes.
And the message we want to send is this is a resource. This is a support. This is not remediation in any way.
Right, absolutely. I think the strongest students are the students who access and that studies show that the students who succeed the most in universities are the people who use the resources that are at hand And also that students who tend to use the resources are already students who are having success. Students who need resources the most are students who tend to avoid them. And that's, I mean, of course, Scott, you knew this. So finding ways to encourage students to see resources as things that can enhance their learning, as opposed to things that show that they need help, is something that can be really positive for students.
Are there any other questions? Oh, I see one in the chat. I like the idea of offering extra credit for using the center. And again, it's that positive reinforcement that I think you're talking about as well.
Yeah, it makes for a happier client. It makes for a happier tutor too. Everybody's just a little bit more happy to be there.
I think the more joy this time of our lives, I think the better.
Absolutely. I agree.
People can find their community in the Writing Center, see other writers, learn from each other, get inspiration, and keep making it through some tough times.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, again, I can't speak highly enough of our tutors right now. They really care about the Writing Center. They care about it as not just a space and a place, but it's a community, and it's their community. And so they take a lot of pride in their work, and they want to make sure that you take a lot of pride in your work too, if you're a client in the center. So if you're there, we're going to work really hard for you to enjoy yourself while you're there and to feel like what you did was useful. We hate when students leave thinking, ugh, that didn't help me at all. So we're going to try to make it as useful to you as possible.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm seeing on our chat that we have lots of compliments for a very informative presentation. Thumbs up from David Young in the library. Great job from Dean Holder. Also want to say too, if you don't mind sharing your Twitter account for our listeners.
Oh yeah, my Twitter account is at Dr. Dix. You can find me.
And the Writing Center as well. Yes,
our Writing Center, you know, we just got a new account, and it's at UNCP_WC.
I've seen wonderful posts there about your tutors, and I hope that our listeners will go visit your Twitter page and see all the wonderful things that your tutors are doing. Mm-hmm. And I see too that you're giving some advice, I think, pretty regularly through your Twitter feed there on the Writing Center page.
Yeah, that's our new graduate coordinator. She is doing an incredible job with our social media, and there will be more content. We're working on a big social media move right now, so we hope to have some videos out there and some more pamphlets about APA 7th edition, those kinds of things. So keep a lookout on our website and on our Twitter.
We will. So for all of our listeners today, thank you very much, Dr. Dixon. It's been a pleasure learning about the Writing Center and your perspectives on your leadership there. We encourage our listeners to visit the Writing Center's Twitter feed and its other social media. And good luck this semester. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much. Great information.
Thanks, Elise.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care.